what's your opinion on Trump? And he goes, look, we are so focused on the personality of these leaders. He goes, when I go to a dentist, he goes, I want the best dentist who can fix my tooth. He goes, am I concerned about how many wives he's had? Am I concerned about how he prays or does this or does that? And ultimately what he was saying was, the job that I need this man to do is fix my tooth. And if I'm going to go around vetting all my dentists on how many people they've married or what they do on the weekend, I'm actually going to hurt myself, because I'm not going to, in fact, be able to get the best dentist out there who's good with teeth. I'm going to constantly be looking at people's character. Now, certainly in leadership, character comes into it. But when there's certain management positions that you need things to be done, if we're just constantly vetting people on what God they pray to, what clothes they wear, what sexual preference they have, and so forth, we can't really get anything done, because all that comes down to.
But I think there's extents to that. So like Trump has been sued over 3,000 times. And if you look at the nature of lawsuits, it's a consistent pattern where he's screwed people. For example, he'll have a plumber or an electrician go and work on one of his hotels, and then they invoice him and he just simply doesn't pay it, because he knows that if he drags it out long enough, they'll take a settlement and end up getting less money. Or the Trump University things where he defrauded elderly people and didn't care at all about it. That does matter in my mind, because when you're the president of the United States, it's not about your ability to execute. You're a figurehead. You have 5,000 plus people. You have all these administrative departments and a massive bureaucratic arm of the United States. Your job is to aggregate power and get a mandate from the American people, and then spend that power by delegating it to people you put into power and ideas you put into power. So you have to build trust, and you have to build a relationship, and you have to build a belief with people that you're going to find a way out of it. It's just like any 4-star general or admiral or any of these people. They're not on the battlefield. They're so far away from it. But you have to have a moral mandate to lead well, and the soldiers have to believe that at the end of the day, you have their best interest at heart. And the presidency is the most extreme example of that, because at the end of the day, they're in charge of 300 million plus people in the most powerful economy in the world, the most powerful military in the world, literally can make life and death decisions. And if they're misled or manipulated, like George W. Bush was by Cheney and his other guys, then suddenly you're in Iraq. And all those soldiers who have to follow, they're ordered to follow, have to endure the consequences of the mistakes you make as the chief executive. So we all rely on you to be great. And it's a strong argument to make that that's too much power and too much faith and too much trust in a single individual. The reason why we call him the president was that we didn't want to call him a king. And that was the weakest term the founders of America could come up with to describe the leader of America. President actually was just like almost like present at a council or something. It wasn't supposed to convey the awe and power of things. And then what happened is the term and role got redefined, and now president usually means the most powerful guy at the table or gal at the table. And it was never meant to have that kind of power. And if the founders knew that we were going to that role, they would have built a very different executive branch with more checks and balances. Even the Romans, when they had consuls of Rome, they had 2 of them to keep the consuls in check. So there was checks and balances that come in. And I think there is definitely a very moral component. There's the difference between morality and competence. The dentist, whether he drinks on the weekends and has 6 wives and sets homeless people on fire, for the most extreme example. As long as he's a great dentist, you might have a Hannibal Lecter dentist. As long as he's not going to eat you, he's probably going to do a pretty good job, probably a bright guy. The president of the United States, you're saying, well, this guy has to make a decision of whether to side with an evil multinational company or make a decision to take care of the poorest and weakest amongst us. This person has to make a decision to enrich himself and put himself in a position where he lives well for the rest of time, or his family does, or benefit us, even if he has to take a personal hit and be humble, and his ego has to take a hit. So character tells you everything about where they're going to side there. Look at Bill Clinton and Barack Obama. We had high hopes for them. They enter office, they leave office, and they get 8-figure book deals and $100 million in speaking fees. Now, those people who paid them those book deals and those speaking fees, do you think it was out of altruism in the bottom of their heart and they were so excited just to give this great charismatic figure all this money? No, no, no. Those are the very same people that were taken care of during their time in office. And they made sure to take care of Barack and Bill when they left office. So we look to character to say they're not going to do that. The hope for Trump was that he was the first outsider politician we had in America in our entire history. Every single president we've had, from Washington to Barack Obama, was part of the system in some way. Either they were a general or they were a senator or a governor. They were somehow connected to the body politique. And then suddenly you have this person, the first time in American history, who seems independent. He's a billionaire, according to him, who comes in and says, I'm so rich and I'm so out there and I'm so divorced from everything. I'm the first time ever you guys get a look at what's behind the curtain, the Wizard of Oz. You actually get to see how the whole swamp works. And we together as outsiders are going to drain it. And you know what? He could have been that guy, but he had to be prepared to be humble and admit that he was wrong. And he had to be prepared to listen and rise to the occasion. Instead, he empowered his family. He put Ivanka in a prominent role, Jared in a prominent role, some of the least qualified, least competent people to major positions of power. And it was a revolving door. He brings in General Mattis, great general, one of the greatest of all time. He's so brilliant. Oh, overrated. He's terrible, whatever. Rex Tillerson, greatest businessman ever, CEO of ExxonMobil. He knows how to lead. He's going to shake up the State Department. He's a moron and has been washed up. He turned on Mike Pence. 4 years of loyally following him. I follow you, Mr. President. I'll go to hell and back for you. And he won't break the law. So suddenly Mike Pence is a traitor and he's a bad guy. And so what kind of a leader does that? When it's all just self-indulgence, and if you don't play into his fantasies and his desire for power, you stab the people who won't indulge you in the back the minute that they become inconvenient to you. Rudy Giuliani's the latest one. It looks like his legal fees aren't going to be paid. Before that was Michael Cohen, his fixer lawyer. And 74 years of this history, and before him, his father. So it was all a con. And what bothers me the most about it is that I see those crowds like the one in Washington. I see those people, and those are good people at the end of the day. They're the people who got screwed in life. They're the truckers. They're the people working at the 7-Elevens. They're the people who are laid off because of the consequences of globalism. They're the factory workers whose factory went out of business and went to Mexico or to China. And they have really not gotten a fair shake. Maybe they got a divorce and the child court was not so kind to them and their child support payments are way too high. Maybe, a family member died of cancer and they weren't able to pay for that. And they have a lot of medical debt and other things that they're dealing with. And they had hope for the first time ever. They didn't think Mitt Romney worked for them. They had hope with Obama. Look at what happened with Occupy Wall Street and the whole Inquisition. Nothing happened. They said we got screwed with that guy. We got screwed with Bill Clinton. We got screwed with George Bush. They've been lied to their whole adult life. And then suddenly this guy comes in as a complete outsider and he built a relationship with them. And he convinced them to their bones that they were finally going to get power. They were finally going to get a way out of the bad position, and all the people that wronged them, all the evils of their life could somehow be corrected. But like every dictator, or, fascist or carnival barker, that demagogue that promises these things, he couldn't deliver. So he had to create a scapegoat. The reason why I can't give you the crazy promises I promised you is because of this racial group or this enemy, the Mexicans, the Democrats, the Muslims, the Chinese, this global conspiracy against me. Go listen to QAnon. He'll tell you it all. And it got crazier and crazier and more far-fetched. And his ego was so strong, he couldn't even admit that he lost the election. And he had every financial incentive to admit it. All he had to do was just ride out 2 months and be humble and let Biden take power. And he could have started Trump News Network, absorbed Newsmax, competed with Fox News, made billions of dollars a year, and leveraged the fact that he still had 74 million Republican supporters to put his kids into power. That's all he had to do. Just shut the hell up and let the nation transition and clean up your legacy and then walk away into the sunset and make all this money. But he couldn't do it. Because if he lost the election, it's a rejection of him. And he can never admit he lost. He can never admit he's flawed. He can never admit he's wrong. I know so many people in the intelligence community, some people who do the presidential daily briefing. And I asked them, what is the daily briefing like with Trump? It's like 3 pages long. It's got lots of pictures, and they have to mention his name in every damn paragraph to get his attention. Every normal president, 30, 40 pages long, detailed information, lots of very probing questions, even Bush, lots of questions, followed by, get me more into this. Let's look more into this. An actual concern and care. It was there. It's just, what is about me? Me. That's not a leader. And I think the presidency should be held to an incredibly high standard, because look at the men who had character beforehand. Look at what Lincoln endured. Look at what Washington endured. Look at the sacrifices all these people had to make in the horrible situations that they were put in. Kennedy with the Cuban Missile Crisis. We were literally a depth charge or two away from a nuclear war, knowing that and enduring that, going through that. The agony FDR went through, with hundreds of thousands of Americans dead in a world war, trying to figure out how the hell are we going to put the world back together after all of this. Harry Truman with Oppenheimer and these other people coming into the White House saying, Mr. President, the nuclear bomb is ready. What do we do with it? And he has his generals sitting there and saying, if we invade Japan, 1 million people are going to die. So do we drop a nuclear weapon? Not once, but twice, being prepared for a third time for Tokyo until these guys surrender. And then still figuring out how to put the world together afterwards. The Marshall Plan. How do we rebuild nations we were just at war with and sell it? And then the people who didn't occupy the office, who could have occupied the office, but made profound sacrifices and sacrificed their political career for it. MacArthur is a great example of that. Not exactly a humble guy, but he had a horrible decision he had to make in Japan in 1945. The American people didn't get Hitler. We were denied that. So we looked to the Emperor of Japan and we said, well, at least we'll hang him. So everybody expected MacArthur to put this guy on trial and charge him for all the war crimes that they viewed happen. And then he has his generals come to him and say, MacArthur, if we do that, there will not be peace in Japan for a century. There'll be civil war and chaos. We got to let the guy go. Even if you have grievances, we have to let him go. And he says, look, 90%, 91% of the American people want the emperor tried and executed. If I let him go, my political career is over. And at the time, it was Eisenhower or MacArthur, and MacArthur was the favored candidate. Everybody knew that one of the 5-star generals in World War II was going to become president within 10 years. So MacArthur was the favored candidate. All he had to do was do what the American people wanted, and he'd be president in 1948. That's simple. If he wanted it, it's all his. And then he's looking at this decision. Do I take care of my political career and my ambitions, or do I do what's necessary for healing and ending the war and moving on and turning Japan into a strong ally? And he made the decision to turn Japan into a strong ally. That's character. Doing the right thing, even if it hurts you. I have never in my entire life seen anything like Trump so bereft of character. Every moment in his existence where he had an opportunity to show that he was thinking about something other than himself, he couldn't do it. He couldn't rise to the occasion. He couldn't give it to somebody. He couldn't help them out. Any act of charity was always connected to some gain for himself. Look, I'm such a great guy. I created a foundation. Then there was, at the end of the rainbow, his kids were making money, or somebody in his orbit was making money, and so forth. And I couldn't believe when he became president, but I had hope. I had hope that he would have a spiritual awakening and realize that he had a real chance for the first time in a long time in America to actually get the divisions to go away. He could have built an infrastructure program that was bipartisan and rebuilt America's infrastructure. He could have finally done a healthcare deal that the Republicans and Democrats couldn't, because he was a bipartisan guy. He was a Democrat for so long. None of these things happened. What killed his healthcare plan? His hatred of John McCain. The whole reason they couldn't even do a healthcare plan was he's so pissed off John McCain that John McCain's like, I'm just not going to vote for it. I'm dying of brain cancer. Fuck this guy. I don't give a shit about my party. Screw you. Thumbs down. Fuck you, Trump. That was 100% Donald Trump. And then what does he do? Let's all hate John McCain and kill his legacy and try to kick his wife and his daughter out of the Republican Party as retribution for his vote against my agenda. And he has no agenda. What is his health care plan? What is his principle? He has no depth on policy. It's morally bankrupt. Then he turns on Mitch McConnell. I mean, it's like he just no level of depravity this man won't go to. I'm sorry. I'm just drained and angry. The COVID response was the final straw for me. You know, there were so many things. Look at Taiwan. 7 people died in Taiwan. 20 million people live in that country, hyper urbanized. They had 17 years to prepare it. The US government had been talking about pandemics since George Bush. They had a whole game plan for it. Everybody ignored it. And the very people that could have done something were not put into power. Instead, it was just all politics from the very beginning. The vaccine warp speed was super political. It was super political on the distribution of PPE. It was super political with the governors. We had 50 different pandemic responses, every one of them crazy. Lockdown in Colorado. I want to go get lunch. I drive up to Wyoming. It takes an hour. How the hell did that stop the spread if the restaurants are open on one side, the other side? Friend who lived in Lake Tahoe. You cross the border of Lake Tahoe from California to Nevada. You literally walk. The restaurant on one side is under a brutal lockdown and no one can even go. On the other side, they're like not even wearing masks. They're just hanging out on the patio. It's literally 100 feet. This is just the craziest national response. And who paid? The American people paid. We printed $6 trillion. All these restaurants went out of business, and all these people just got hopeless and hurt. And that same group of people, he then manipulated to go ahead and get so angry at all of their misfortunes and convince them that the election of the opposing political party is the end of America and we're all going to go and the New World Order's in charge and China's in charge and all of these other things have happened. My God, it was just pathetic. And I remember watching his White House press conferences with Fauci and the rest of these guys. We've done a great job. Nobody could have done a great job. We did the best job. The governors are calling me, telling me how great my job is. Look at this quote from this guy. Oh my God, imagine how much solace that would give someone. Yeah, the general just told me he did a great job. Yeah, but we just lost half of our battalion because we were ambushed. No, but the general told me that we did a great job. He just got a call from the president. He said, no one would do a better job than that general. Pathetic. It's just pathetic. It was an abdication of leadership and responsibility at a time when we could have actually set politics aside and done things differently. It just didn't happen. And that was the greatest indictment of his legacy and the final nail in the coffin for it. And he will go down in history as one of the worst presidents. Not the worst, probably Andrew Johnson was just as bad, if not worse, but definitely one of the worst presidents in the 20th and 21st century.
Are you worried or feeling confident about Biden?
I mean, he's got dementia. He's 78 years old, and the guy's clearly in cognitive decline. My grandfather died of Alzheimer's. My grandmother died of dementia. My other grandmother had Lewy body disease. I'm very familiar with the symptoms of dementia and watching them gradually fade. And it's incredibly clear to me that while he has some acumen, he's not operating on a full battery. And the problem is you cannot put a 78-year-old guy showing signs of dementia into the most powerful job in the world where you have to be with it 24 hours a day. I mean, look at Obama. Comes in young, happy black guy, comes out with white hair. I mean, it's like he aged so much in 8 years and he's in great shape. He eats really well. He exercises every day. I don't think Biden is going to survive his term. And even if he does, he's going to be a shell of himself by the time he'll be 83, I think, by the time his term ends. It's crazy. So I don't think Biden himself is capable of doing the job. The good news is he's been a swamp creature for so long that he kind of knows like all these competent people. And it's clear that he's putting into power a lot of people that are kind of self-motivated, and so this administration he's constructing is relatively moderate. And I think that they can get us through kind of like Gerald Ford did the next few years. But what's going to happen is we're going to have a great political reset in 2022 and in 2024. Had Trump not done what he did, I would have put every dollar down that the Republicans were going to retake the House and the Congress. Given that he's done what he's done and he's still relevant in the party and it's fractured, we could have Republicans and Whigs. It's just crazy. I don't know what's going to happen in 2022, but I think what probably will occur is the same thing that happened in 1966 with Richard Nixon. So everybody thought Nixon was dead. he lost the governor election in 1962 after he lost the presidential election to Kennedy in 1960. And then in 1964, we had Barry Goldwater run, and the party got decimated. And then the Republicans were kind of in the hinterlands. And what Nixon did is he put the whole party back together in 1966. And as a consequence, it made him relevant again. And then he ran in 68, and he was able to outmaneuver Nelson Rockefeller and George Romney and win the nomination. And Robert Kennedy got shot, so he got to run against a weaker candidate and became president. So I think that there's something similar, without the death of a Kennedy, is probably going to happen. We're going to see somebody in 2022 put the Republican Party back together, and that person will become the heir apparent in 2024 for the nomination. The Democrats will likely nominate Kamala Harris to run in 2024. I don't think Biden is going to run. And the problem is people are so politically fractured and divided, and the Democrats are just going for blood. I mean, Trump is gone. Why are they impeaching him? It's almost like, I call it the cadaver synod. There was a 9th century trial that the Catholic Church put on to put a former pope on trial. So they exhumed a body, a corpse that was 7 months dead, and they put the corpse on trial in the 9th century. And it's like, what are you doing? I mean, this guy's gone. He's going to be under criminal investigation, dozen plus lawsuits. He's going to be trying to pay his bills, and there's no way he's going to run in 2024. Let the guy go, and just let off it and focus on the future. So instead of talking about the nomination of Biden's cabinet and how the hell are we going to put America back together, they're talking about impeaching a president, and the Republican Party's not going to remove him. So we'll go through another impeachment trial, and then the Republicans who didn't vote, the media is going to go crazy, and they're going to viciously attack all those Republicans, and it'll just make people angrier and more dividted. I thought they wanted unity.
Coming?
It could. It absolutely could, because the civil, look at America in 1850s and the abolitionist movement and how those disagreements were percolating. And there wasn't an acknowledgement that there was legitimacy to certain arguments. And as a consequence, people got more divided and they got angrier with each other. And the problem is that Trump convinced half of America that the election was stolen. So now they think voting doesn't matter. So they can't express themselves through a democratic process. And now they're being deplatformed by stupid liberals in Silicon Valley. So now they have no place to vent. So their conspiracies are being validated. They think the New World Order is taking over America and deplatforming them and introducing evil things. So now they're being deplatformed. So everything that the Alex Joneses of the world were telling them is going to happen is happening to them. So of course they're going to start going to violence. What other recourse do they have? They can't vote their way out of it. They can't talk their way out of it. They don't trust the other party. And the other party is calling all of them Nazis and white supremacists and evil people. And if they don't fall in line with their political ideology, they're horrible human beings, and they should be deplatformed and isolated. Woke cult has gotten so bad, kids are telling their grandparents, sorry, grandpa, I can't associate with you anymore. I'm sorry, Dad, I can't talk to you anymore because you're just a Nazi. You voted for Trump. I can never talk to you again. What the hell kind of political philosophy makes people exile their family members? Cults do that. We don't do that to a free society where people are allowed to disagree. So they're doing that. The other side is getting radicalized and angry, and they think violence is their only recourse, and they can't discern fact from fiction anymore, and they've become part of this QAnon cult. So yeah, absolutely, violence is going to happen unless you have a leader talk your country out of it. And lucky for us, in the 1960s and 1970s, we had leaders who were capable of finding a way to pulling us back from the brink, where society was dissolving. It was the same in the 1930s. You had radical communism flowing throughout Russia. You had fascism flowing throughout Europe. We had the Great Depression in America. And a lot of people were saying, maybe this whole democracy republic thing is not the best government. Maybe we should be communists. There were over 1 million members of the American Communist Party. There were over 1 million members of the American Nazi Party in the 1930s. And it was only through great leadership we were able to keep it together and prevent a civil war from happening. So you get close to these things when you recognize the signs and symptoms of it, and you have to diffuse that bomb. And you don't do it by putting people in a corner and calling them Nazis and attacking them and saying half the country is irredeemable and deplorable. You do it with empathy. You do it by apologizing and admitting your own failures and flaws, taking a step back from the brink and saying, guys, we can all agree that if we don't agree, it's all going to come to an end. So let's find a way to find something we can agree to and then build from there. And maybe it's the coronavirus response. We can all agree that maybe if we get out of this pandemic and we get our lives back to normal, that's a good thing for America. So let's just focus on that. Let's put everything else on hold. The woke cult, the racial justice and social justice stuff, and the economic justice, the AOC insanity. Let's put all of that on hold, the Green New Deal on hold and these other things. And let's just do this pandemic thing and get us out of it. And let's just focus on that, okay? Then once we're out of it, we've built some common ground and we have a common accomplishment that was bipartisan, and America came together. And because we came together on that, it's proof we can come together on other things. And then let's look for the next thing we can come together on. Our infrastructure is crumbling in America. It hasn't been rebuilt in 40 years. Let's go do that and bring America together for that. And then we can all agree our healthcare system is not working. So let's all come together on that. A great leader can do that and can bring people together for these types of things. I don't think Biden has that ability because his brain is gone. And I don't think Harris is a very good VP. So she sure as hell is not going to do that. So somebody has to, in his administration, do it and lead us out of it. I hope to God, for the sake of America, we can find a way to do that. And I have to be optimistic. I really do. Because every time in human history when we've looked at the brink, whether it be during the Cuban Missile Crisis or it be during the 80s when there was a Russian colonel who decided not to launch the nuclear weapons from the software bug, we've found a way to get back from the brink. And I'm not going to be so cynical to think that people can't do that. It's no one's best interest to push us to a civil war.